Every year, in the quiet stretch of January, the United States pauses for a day that is more than just a holiday. It's a moment of reflection, of memory, and, if we're honest, of unfinished business. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is not simply about remembering a man. It's about remembering a movement, a moral challenge, and a question that still echoes today. What are we doing with the dream? On the third Monday of January, close to his birthday on January 15th, the country honors Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist minister who never held public office, never commanded an army, and yet reshaped the moral direction of a nation.
Congress passes the most sweeping civil rights bill ever to be written into the law, and thus reaffirms the conception of equality for all men.
His influence didn't come from power as we usually define it. It came from words, courage, sacrifice, and an unshakable belief in nonviolence. But to understand why this day exists, we have to go back, not just to King himself, but to the America he was born into. Martin Luther King Jr. entered the world in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, a city deeply shaped by segregation. This was an America governed by Jim Crow laws, where racial separation was not only common but enforced by law and violence. Schools were separate, neighborhoods were divided, opportunities were unequal by design. For Black Americans, discrimination wasn't an occasional injustice, it was daily reality. King grew up watching this system operate. He saw signs that told him where he could and could not go. He listened as adults explained why things were just the way they are. But even early on, he questioned that logic. He was raised in a household where faith and social responsibility were inseparable. His father, a pastor, taught him that Christianity was not passive, that faith demanded action in the face of injustice. That belief would later define his life. King's rise to national prominence came in 1955 during the Montgomery bus boycott. After Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat, Black residents of Montgomery, Alabama, organized a mass protest against the city's segregated bus system. King, then only 26 years old, was chosen to help lead the effort. What followed was more than a boycott. It was a blueprint for a movement. For over a year, people walked miles to work rather than ride segregated buses. They endured arrests, threats, and violence. King's own home was bombed, yet the protest remained nonviolent. That was not weakness, it was strategy. King believed that nonviolence exposed the moral bankruptcy of segregation while preserving the dignity of those who resisted it. And it worked. In 1956, the Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. From that moment on, King became the face of the modern civil rights movement. But fame was not his goal. Justice was. He traveled the country organizing protests, delivering speeches, and building coalitions. He spoke not just to Black Americans, but to the conscience of the nation.
Finally, in your life's blueprint must be a commitment to the eternal principles of beauty, love, and justice. Don't allow anybody to pull you so low as to make you hate them.
In 1963, that conscience was tested on a global stage. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom brought more than 250,000 people to the nation's capital. Standing before the Lincoln Memorial, King delivered what would become one of the most famous speeches in history. "I have a dream."
I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream.
It wasn't just eloquent, it was prophetic.
1963 is not an end, but a beginning.
King spoke of a nation living up to its founding ideals.
Yes, black men as well as white men would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Of children judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
That speech did not end racism, but it shifted the conversation. It made injustice impossible to ignore. The movement gained momentum. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed segregation in public spaces. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 targeted discriminatory practices that had long prevented Black Americans from voting. These victories came at a cost. Lives were lost, bodies were beaten, families were torn apart. King himself was arrested multiple times, including during the Birmingham campaign, where he wrote his famous Letter from Birmingham Jail, defending civil disobedience against unjust laws. Yet even as laws changed, King understood that equality on paper did not mean equality in reality.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper.
In his later years, he began speaking more openly about economic injustice, poverty, and the Vietnam War.
Of the freedom of assembly, somewhere I read, of the freedom of speech. We aren't going to let any injunction turn us around.
This shift made him controversial, even among former allies. He argued that racism, militarism, and economic exploitation were interconnected. You couldn't fix one without addressing the others. His vision expanded beyond civil rights toward what he called the beloved community.
You must have the determination to achieve excellence in your various fields of endeavor.
A society rooted in justice, compassion, and shared responsibility. That vision frightened many. On April 4, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee.
In a window in a flophouse, the assassin waited.
He was 39 years old. His death sent shockwaves across the world. Cities burned. Grief turned into rage. And the question lingered, what happens to a dream when its dreamer is gone? In the years following his assassination, calls began for a national holiday in King's honor, but the path to recognition was long and deeply political. Some lawmakers resisted, questioning whether King deserved such recognition. Others opposed the idea of honoring a civil rights leader at all. It took 15 years of activism, lobbying, and public pressure before the holiday was finally signed into law in 1983. President Ronald Reagan approved the legislation, and in 1986, Martin Luther King Jr. Day was officially observed for the first time. Even then, not all states recognized it immediately. Some resisted for years. It wasn't until 2000 that all 50 states fully observed the holiday. That history matters because it reminds us that even honoring King required struggle. In 1994, the day was redefined again, not just as a day off, but as a day of service. The idea was simple but powerful. King didn't want passive admiration, he wanted action. Volunteering, community projects, and civic engagement became central to the holiday's purpose. It was meant to be a day on, not a day off. And yet, every year, the same question returns. Has America lived up to the dream? The answer is complicated. On one hand, progress is undeniable. Legal segregation is gone. Opportunities have expanded. Representation has increased in politics, media, and business. On the other hand, racial inequality persists in wealth, education, healthcare, and the criminal justice system. The conversations King sparked are still ongoing, often heated, often painful. And that's exactly why this day matters. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is not about freezing King in history as a harmless symbol. It's about wrestling with his ideas in the present. King was not universally loved in his time. He challenged comfort. He disrupted systems. He demanded moral accountability, not just from politicians, but from everyday citizens. He asked uncomfortable questions. Who benefits from injustice? Who stays silent? Who pays the price? Those questions are still relevant. Around the country, the holiday is marked by marches, speeches, church services, and community service projects. Schools teach his words. Politicians quote his speeches. Social media fills with sound bites. But the true measure of the day isn't how often his name is mentioned, it's how seriously his message is taken. King believed that history bends toward justice, but only if people push it.
I accept this award on behalf of a civil rights movement which is moving with determination to establish a reign of freedom and a rule of justice.
Progress was not automatic. It required courage, sacrifice, and sustained effort. He understood that democracy is fragile and that rights once won can be rolled back if people stop paying attention. In that sense, Martin Luther King Jr. Day is less a celebration and more a checkpoint. Where are we now? What kind of society are we building? and what role do we play in it? King once said that the ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in moments of comfort, but where they stand in times of challenge and controversy. That idea turns the spotlight away from him and onto us. Because remembering Martin Luther King Jr. is easy, living his values is not. As the day comes and goes each year, the challenge remains the same. To listen, not just to his most famous words, but to the full scope of his vision. To recognize that justice is not a destination, but a process. And to understand that the dream was never meant to belong to one man. It was meant to be carried forward by generations. Martin Luther King Jr. Day asks us to do more than remember history. It asks us to participate in it.